everybody, welcome. Let me go back to myself here for a second. Welcome to the live cast once again, and I have an exciting topic that I want to talk about today, which is a question I get asked a lot, and it's kind of a two-parter. Part of it is about where big ideas come from. A lot, as we head into the new year, I'm finding more and more clients are calling, asking for whether it's workshops or strategy projects, but they're trying to answer the question, what are the kind of big opportunities that they should be pursuing in 2021? And what most people are aware of is that a lot of digital big idea opportunities are going to somehow exist at a certain intersection between business and technology. And this interface, this collaboration between business and technology in most organizations, I believe, is kind of where the battle is won or lost. If you are doing an excellent job in your organization with this collaboration, you've at least set yourself up for success in that regard towards being able to identify great opportunities and execute them effectively and run your digital operations in an effective way on an ongoing basis. And when you do not have an optimal relationship and interaction between business and technology, then you have probably not set yourself up for success. Now, I'm not going to try to cover today like the totality of how to have business and technology work together well. There's many facets to that. But I really want to focus today on this idea of coming up with big ideas, the thing that's going to kind of drive potentially success for your organization in the coming year or whatever period of time you are focused on. So let's just talk about that a little bit. I kind of already alluded to this, but what I find is that great new ideas, whether they're a new marketing campaign or whether they are some better way of providing customer service or a new product that you're going to sell in stores or a new app or whatever it may be, usually come about because you've identified something at the intersection of an unmet need that your customer has, something that would make their life better in some way, which usually means either removing some form of existing pain or creating some kind of new delight. And as we've talked about on prior episodes of this show, very often new delight actually comes about by removing pain that just isn't perceived as pain. It's perceived as it's accepted pain. We've talked about that before. But even if you're not familiar with that idea, just the general idea that if you're able to create some new beneficial benefit for your customer, then that's the kind of thing that's typically going to be a good big idea as long as it's possible, right? Believe me, I mean, if we could have teleporters today, I mean, if you could bring out a teleporter product like on Star Trek this year, that would be fantastic. I have no doubt that if that were safe and effective to avoid air travel in an era of COVID, if I could just teleport to LA, that would be a very successful product. The only problem is, although it is represents an unmet need, there's really not the technology today to bring that to life. And no doubt, you could come up with many examples of products that if we had them, they would be wildly successful, but we can't build them. And by the way, there's also all kinds of technology out there that if you just start throwing it at your product, if you just start adding, a drone feature or, integration with, your television or whatever, if it doesn't meet some unmet need, just adding new technology capabilities is probably not going to benefit you much. It's probably not going to be the right kind of big idea. And so the real opportunity typically exists by figuring out what are some unmet needs in the marketplace and what is technology able to do and where is there opportunity at that intersection. And, one of the things that makes this challenging, there's a few things that make it challenging. But actually, before we get into that, let me just give you a few examples. I just wanted to give you a few examples of what I mean. What are these opportunities that come up? Well, just take an example. Amazon applying robotics to their warehouses. So now if you go to an Amazon warehouse, while there are people there, there's also a tremendous amount of robotics, these little orange robots that move, that look like those little Roomba vacuum cleaners. But what they're really doing is they're moving shelves around that contain inventory to make it faster and easier to be able to, package whatever you've ordered from Amazon. So they have taken what was no doubt a point of pain in the warehouse, which was people having to run around long distances and spend a lot of time trying to gather whatever it is you've ordered from Amazon and put it into a box and use robotics to take the time out of that and make that more efficient. So it's an opportunity, it's an overlap between some kind of a problem they had, some kind of point of pain they had, and a capability that technology provided. And of course, that might not have been possible 10 years ago. The area of technology capabilities are constantly changing and evolving. Another example would be Google Images or Google Photos, where I think I have something like 70,000 images, if you can believe it, that I've uploaded to Google Photos. This is from 20 years plus, images of my kids, images of vacations, art, fun, art photography projects I've done, etc. I take a lot of photos. And so what's awesome is that I can go to my Google Photos account and type in the name of my daughter, Rachel, and it will bring up all the images of Rachel from when she was an infant all the way to pictures I took last week through facial recognition. It's learned what Rachel's face looks like, and amazingly can still tell that it's Rachel, even no matter whether it's when she was, literally 1 day old to now she's 19 years old. So that's the application of facial recognition technology to an unmet need or a previously unmet need, which is, gosh, I remember when Rachel was little, before we had these technologies, I had DVDs that I would have burned, not with videos, but just photos. I would take photos, I'd fill photo cards up, and then when I wanted to free up the photo cards, I just burned them onto a DVD. And at one point, I had a little book, with those little vinyl pages with all my DVDs in it that had Rachel 1 month old, Rachel 3 months old, written on marker in Sharpie on the DVDs. But the problem was, if I was looking for something in particular, I was trying to find a picture with Rachel with her Aunt Michelle. Well, that wasn't easy to do. I'd have to go and look through a lot of DVDs. So there was pain. There was an unmet need. And Google recognized that and convinced me to upload all my images to the cloud. And now they're all sitting in the cloud. And now I can just type Rachel plus Michelle and find that image. And by the way, it doesn't just work for faces. I can type in Rachel Beach and find pictures of Rachel at the beach, or Rachel Tree, or obviously not only Rachel, I have 4 other kids. I can type in any of their names or even one of their friends. So that's fantastic. I had to do a layout for my daughter, Jessica's graduating from high school, and I had to do a yearbook. You pay your sponsor a yearbook page. So we paid to sponsor a page in the yearbook. And then I had to make a little photo collage for Jessica. And I was able to find all kinds of pictures of her with some of her good friends when her friends were much younger. And, it was very quick and easy for me to do. So a fantastic example of taking a technology capability that didn't really exist when I started taking pictures of my daughter, Rachel, 19 years ago, but applying it to an unmet need and applying a technology capability and coming out with a product that's a huge hit. And if you look at many other successful products, Uber, of course, is using technologies like GPS, and just the fact that you have a GPS for the driver and a GPS for the rider, and the fact that they're all wirelessly connected and enabling them to obviously use AI and other algorithms to match people up correctly and process payments and a variety of technology capabilities. But what they saw was that there was an unmet need around taxi services or car services, where it was challenging, it was time consuming to order one, you didn't necessarily get the closest one, etc. And they were able to apply technology to create an opportunity to deliver a better customer experience. Another example would be Venmo, who recognized that there was pain around these kind of small payments that you might make to friends, or you might make to like a handyman who comes to your house. And they took the available technology around payment technology and applied it to an area of pain and unmet need and created an opportunity. And of course, now with new payment possibilities coming up in the future, whether that's things like Bitcoin or other methods of applying blockchain, I think we can assume that anyone who's in the financial space is continuously asking the question, not only what do these cool new technologies do, like say blockchain, but what are the unmet needs? How can we find an opportunity that brings these things together? Because I'm sure you can all think of examples of products that were brought to market that attempted to take a technology and make it available, but it didn't really address an unmet need and therefore wasn't necessarily that successful. And of course, you have to do a good job of applying the technology to the unmet need in order to have a successful product, because all we're really talking about here is opportunity. Bear in mind, not every opportunity works out, right? You could have an opportunity because you see a connection, and if you don't implement it well, if you don't market it well, then that opportunity may not be fulfilled, may not reach its potential. But in this session today, we're really talking about how do you identify the best opportunities. So it creates a challenge, though, which is usually the people who really understand the needs of your customers are not the same people who have the best understanding of technology, right? And this goes back to what I said at the beginning. You usually have some kind of tech IT team that may be up to date, hopefully on the latest capabilities of technology, whether you're talking about robotics technology or blockchain technology or other types of payment technology or e-commerce technology or AI to do anything from facial recognition to identifying, customers and what to market to them. And obviously it goes on, all the different types of technologies that are continuously evolving. So we have this landscape of continuously changing technology on the right side of our little overlapping circle diagram. And then we also, by the way, have a landscape of continuously changing customer needs on the left side. Because after all, are your customer needs the same today as they were 5 years ago? Of course not. In fact, are they even the same as they were 6 months ago? With COVID, probably not. Customers' needs are always changing, and at certain periods of time, like now, they're changed even more rapidly. And so this becomes a challenge, right? Because if you try to think about, well, how do I solve for this? How do I identify these opportunities? It requires that you be able to understand both sides of this equation. So how do you do that? Well, one way is to say, I'm going to find a Renaissance individual. I'm going to find somebody or a bunch of somebodies who deeply understand the technology and then also understand my industry, understand my customer, and understand what those unmet needs may be. And therefore, within their own brains, they're going to be able to generate opportunity ideas. And that's great. If you can find that person, then you should hire that person. In fact, I often counsel people who are asking me like career advice. I think one of the highest value, highest paying roles to have at a company is to be the bridge person, the person who understands both the business and the technology domain at enough depth to really be able to start to think about these types of things. And by the way, identifying opportunities is not the only time when it's very valuable to be somebody who understands both the technology and the need, because the truth is, as you move through a product development life cycle, even once you identify the opportunity, you've got a lot more work to do to really refine the opportunity and then to overcome obstacles as you go through trying to bring it to market. And it's always helpful to have that person who really deeply understands the technology and really deeply understands the customer. The thing is, that person is pretty rare. It's pretty rare. It's sort of like saying, I want to find somebody who's a really great brain surgeon. That's hard enough. But they also have to be able to tap dance. Now you got to take it's just like my overlapping circles. You got to take the universe of people who know how to tap dance and the universe of people who are brain surgeons and figure out where are the overlaps and how many people fit in that overlap. So if you can find those people, they're amazing to have as part of your product development, opportunity identification, innovation, organization, whatever you want to call it. But if you don't have people like that, if you have people who are, mostly business people or mostly technology people, and by the way, I certainly think it's still good to make sure that your business people are given some tutelage in technology. They go to a seminar on AI, they go to a seminar on blockchain or robotics. And similarly, it's valuable to have your technology people be given periodic updates and information about the state of the business and the state of customer needs. So that doesn't necessarily turn people into Renaissance individuals. They still may mainly be one thing or the other, but at least you're feeding them some insight from kind of the other side of the equation. So certainly that's something that you want to be doing. That's good to be doing. There are other alternatives in addition, which I want to talk about. So a second is to, first of all, research is key. Frankly, even when you have a Renaissance individual, that person still has to be fed or to engage in research, because, as I mentioned earlier, these things are constantly changing. So you need to make sure that somebody within your organization is looking into new technology capabilities all the time and also regularly getting refreshed on customer needs, which is one of the reasons why it's really tough to have these Renaissance individuals, because not only do they need to kind of come to you that way, but that Renaissance knowledge, and just to be clear, when I say Renaissance, I'm just referring to this idea like a Michelangelo or a Da Vinci, somebody who has their mind both in the arts and literature, but also in science and all that, and that's kind of the idea, the Renaissance man idea. That was a lot easier probably 400 years ago when there was less to know. Right now, there's so much to know just about technology that very, very few people understand the full landscape of technology, from front-end technology to back-end technology, app development, AI, networking, infrastructure, cloud, let alone understand all that and also understand the customer. And frankly, there's so much to understand about the customer's needs as well. It can be very, very difficult. In any case, it's critical that you have ongoing research, though, so that you're continuously refreshing that knowledge. And then some form of information management. And by information management, I mean it can be idea management tools like bright idea or spigot, but it can also just be Google Docs or things like that, but things where you're pulling into one place. Hey, these are the technologies that we have identified that at least might have some applicability to our world. And here are some unmet needs that we know our customers have. And don't be afraid to put down unmet needs like, they'd like to teleport from place to place. Sometimes on the business side, we don't even realize the customer problems that we could solve if technology were applied. And therefore, we don't even go to IT and say, or go to our tech teams and say, hey, can you solve this problem? Because we just assume they can't. We're not aware. And meanwhile, technology team might become aware of a new technology, but not realize that there's a business need for it. So this is the connection point that you need to try to create. And so when I say information management, I just mean having a place, an intranet site or whatever it is. It can be simple where everyone can go and at least have a place to get an overview and understand, hey, here are some of the unmet needs that we would love to try to figure out how to solve, and take somebody like Amazon who knows that an unmet need is people want to get their product faster and faster and faster. They're always trying to figure out and they've gone from, taking 3 or 4 days to get something to having Amazon Prime, being able to get stuff in 2 days, to in some markets they're delivering in 1 day or even same day. And of course, you've probably all seen, the Amazon experiments with drones, seeing whether they can actually deliver products to you just within a few hours by drone. So you can see there how, while they haven't necessarily found the right solution to be able to productize yet, they're constantly asking the question, where are there still unmet needs, and where are the technologies that create at least an opportunity that they should be pursuing. So the second way of potentially supporting this is through ongoing research and making sure you have a method to manage what you've learned, both on the IT side or technology side, and also on the customer needs side. Another is informal collaboration. You've probably heard about the design of the Pixar offices that already goes back probably 10 years. But when Steve Jobs was involved in designing the Pixar offices, and I think they used the same principles when they designed the new Apple mothership in Cupertino, of always thinking about how do you create a workspace where people can easily have kind of casual and even just happenstance interactions with people from other departments. Just getting that cross-departmental, cross-discipline casual interactions. And the next thing you know, people are having a conversation about a problem they're having or a technology they found. And sometimes through those casual or happenstance interactions, an idea comes up, a possibility of combining something on the IT side with something on the business side. And of course, then you want to make sure there's a place for them to take that, right? They might have an idea and say, yeah, but unfortunately it's not on our roadmap for the next 5 years. So, oh, well, there's nothing to do with that idea. Or maybe the two of them say, hey, let's both quit our jobs and create a startup and we'll go pursue the idea there, right? But you want to make sure that not only are you fostering these ways that informal collaboration can occur, but that if an idea is sparked, there's some innovation fund or other method for those people to come to whoever and say, hey, we have an idea we'd like to pursue. Like at Google, they have the famous, 10% time. Everyone can spend a certain percentage of their week on independent projects that they're just personally interested in pursuing, and they can team with anyone at Google that they want to on those projects. So if it's something that's cross-disciplinary, it's the perfect place to try something out and see whether it has the legs to potentially become more of a product. So that's informal collaboration. The next is workshops. Many of you know we have a whole workshop facility in Manhattan, which is designed to bring teams together to be able to ideate and share information and come up with possible concepts and prioritize them and do go-to-market planning and strategizing and all those types of activities where you have much, similar to what we're trying to do with informal collaboration in the sense that we're typically bringing together a multidisciplinary team, but I don't want to say it's formal. It's not like you're going to wear a suit and tie, but it is structured, right? It's a structured, planned event where we bring people together for a day or 2 days or 3 days. And that's another way to say, we want to identify some new opportunity areas. Let's bring together the people with these different areas of expertise, people with different areas of knowledge about unmet needs and different areas of knowledge of technology. Let's bring them together and let's move them through some facilitated exercises and activities. And we've done that many, many times with large companies with fantastic results. And sometimes it's just a matter of creating a forum for those people to actually get together and share what they know. Another example are Shark Tank-like projects. You're probably familiar with the TV show Shark Tank, where entrepreneurs come and pitch their big business idea and try to get funding. I've seen many companies now that are encouraging these types of gamified Shark Tank activities where employees can, through informal collaboration, get together in teams and possibly get a little bit of funding to be able to pursue some idea. Then they have a format to bring it in front of a bunch of senior executives and say, hey, here's a product or an opportunity that we see. Another example of this sort of thing would be hackathons, which even probably should be on this slide, where again, you're bringing people together for intense periods of time to try to come up with something creative to solve an existing problem. And one thing I want to emphasize on the unmet need side of this equation, I've been talking a lot about customer unmet needs. And the reason I do that is because in my experience, that's where the money is. The meeting your customers' needs and delighting them and exceeding their needs is the number one way to grow a business. It's the number one way to make sure your business is profitable, the number one way to make sure you have long-term sustainability. But there are also needs within your organization. Very often, those needs have to do with either employee productivity, morale, overall efficiency, things like that. So you may have unmet needs that are internal, and you can use the same process as well to come up with a better method for doing time and expense reports, or a better method for doing ideation, or a better method for handling your manufacturing planning and scheduling, or whatever that may be. So those unmet needs don't necessarily have to be on the customer side, although normally that's sort of the first place we look. But again, that raises further the challenge of having the Renaissance individual, of having that one person who understands all the technologies that are coming about and how they're changing constantly, and understands all the needs across all the divisions of your company, both on the customer side and internally. I mean, it's just an overwhelming landscape. So if you have some sort of like a genius, then maybe they can do it, but ordinary mortals typically can't, which is why we have these other types of structures. So I just wanted to share. So these are some of the things that we've seen work to try to get people who have different pods of knowledge working together in different ways, making sure they're keeping that knowledge up to date, and then collaborating to really figure out where those opportunities are. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about in this context today is, so what do you do once you have a bunch of possible ideas? You've brought people together, you've identified different ways you could bring technology and some area of need, whether it's customer need or other need, together, and you have an idea, you have an opportunity. And again, today's session is really just about creating big ideas. We could do future sessions about how do you effectively execute a big idea, etc. And that's obviously a key part of it. But today we're just really talking about identifying opportunity. But one of the things that can happen is once you really get this going and you have people working together, let's say in a workshop, the next thing you know, you might have 100 possibilities. And one thing I always jokingly like to say is, the only thing worse than having no ideas is to have 1,000 ideas, right? And I say that only because then you have a different kind of problem, because you can't pursue, even 10% of all these ideas. How are you going to figure out which ones to pick? And so I want to offer you just a little bit of thought about that. A certain model that we use, once we've identified a bunch of big ideas, we have a 4-part filter that we like to think about. And the first part is cost. And really, by that we mean, where does this have the potential to either reduce the cost for the customer, meaning this is an idea that will allow us to deliver more value to the customer for a lower cost, or at least a lower perceived cost. Sometimes you have a big idea that makes your product twice as useful and adds only marginal cost. You might increase the cost of the product a little bit, but the perceived cost is much, much better because you're able to deliver much higher quality. Speaking of quality, I don't know if any of you noticed, but I've just switched the video setup in my office when I do these live casts, and I've got a product called the Blackmagic A10 Mini, and it's a video switcher, and it allows me, it's part of my setup now, and it essentially does what a giant like Grass Valley video production suite would have done 20 years ago, which would have cost probably maybe, I don't know, $250,000 or something to buy in 1990. It's a $399 little device that sits on my desk and does basically the same thing, and actually even better because it does it in HD quality. So, if you can figure out how to deliver the same level of value but for a much lower cost like they've done, that product's been a runaway success. When the pandemic was first going, you couldn't even get them because so many people wanted to buy them. The next is time. If you can save people time, make things more efficient. Uber is an example, saves people time. Certainly many e-commerce, Amazon saves me a ton of time, right?
He can't see me. Howard, we lost your audio.